December 2, 2018. The Birth of Joy. Neil Worthington, licensed Unity teacher and spiritual leader at Unity of Payson, Arizona.
So we're getting in on the joy thing from a musical point of view. It is the season of joy, and as we've already noted, it's our theme for the month of September. We celebrate the birth of the baby Jesus and all the stories that go with that. Jesus, who grew to be a master teacher for us so that we can navigate our experience, that we can work with our relationships and with our world. But what is true joy? Where does it begin? And how can we experience it not only seasonally now, but occasionally, but all the time? So I've made a definition. Joy is the free and unrestrained experience of life, happiness, blessedness, bliss. Say it once more, and you're reading it. Life, or joy, is the free and unrestrained experience of life, happiness, blessedness, bliss. Let's dig into it a little bit deeper. If you're like me, you've had some flashes of joy. They come into your life, and wow, they were neat, but they subsided pretty quickly, and then it was back to usual, and joy wasn't there. Or maybe you're one of those people that experiences it all the time. Talk to me afterwards. I need to learn some things from you. But take a moment and just think of a joyous experience in your life. Something of complete happiness. Feeling immensely blessed. Think of that. Get that image in your mind. Review it. Live it again, just for a moment. You got it? Okay, now say you have a starting place. You have a picture, but that picture, unfortunately, can fade and dim into unawareness, if you're like me. It's there, but it's hard to grab onto sometimes when life situations and circumstances come up. Joy is elusive, you might say. But now let's look at it differently. Get another angle on it. Let's look outside of your experience to experiences of joy. I don't know if any of you, well, I confess I'm a little bit like this too, are somewhat taken to watching videos of animals. Like that dog up there. Or maybe you take picture after picture of your pet, and you can't get enough of it. Well, you know, those pets just unreservedly experience life. It may be a horse kicking up its heels. It may be a chipmunk riding on the back of a cat. I've seen that, believe it or not, on Facebook. A dog chasing its tail. You, in fact, when you watch those videos or make them, are vicariously experiencing joy. That free, without reserve experience of life. Or maybe you're one of these people that, as many of us are, have children or grandchildren. That may be even more poignant. And that child is born, and you look from the very beginning for those expressions of life, the kicking of the feet and the waving of the arms and the first smile that breaks out, and you just follow that and you feed on that, and it just does something for you, and the child grows a little bit and they become a unique person, and they don't care whether you like it or not. They just experience life. They don't hold anything back. They just experience life until a certain point, and then it changes. Or it might be the joy of creative expression that you experience yourself, or that you witness somebody else experiencing. So maybe it's a comic that stands up and they're telling you a little bit about their life and their experience. And so they just kind of lay it all out there, and it's funny, and you laugh. And you realize that they've just let go and let life be. Let life, as you said, live them. Or it could be the singer that sings absolutely from the soul, nothing in between. Just letting it be, letting life live, letting joy come through. Or the dancer, like the one up here, that just is not thinking about what you're looking at. They're just thinking about life, just experiencing it to the fullest. Joy. It's another vicarious expression that you might have about joy. So take your experience, add to it those experiences that you witness all the time. And I want to tell you one in particular that I ran into as I was preparing for this talk. Ludwig van Beethoven created his 9th symphony, at the last full symphony that he ever wrote, at the end of his life. And he was completely deaf at the time that he created that. It is, anybody know what it was? What's the phrase that we...
Dun, 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 dun.
No. What do we call that? Part of that 9th symphony. Ode to Joy. You got it. All right.
I was close.
And you know what? We sang it. Joyful, 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 we adore thee. The first song that we sang is the Ode to Joy from Beethoven. But let me tell you a little bit about how that happened. Again, Beethoven was completely deaf, but his genius and his creative urge was as strong as ever. And so the symphony being finished, a place for it to be performed was decided, and that was the theater in Vienna. And the theater conductor, the official conductor of the performance, took this work and brought it to life with an orchestra larger than Beethoven had ever worked with before, and 4 vocalists. For the first time in all of symphony writing, vocalists were included in the symphony. So it was a wonderful, much anticipated experience. Now, the theater conductor instructed his musicians and his singers, don't pay any attention to Beethoven. I'm the one that's going to be doing the conducting here. So yes, he composed this, but don't pay any attention to him. And so it went on, and Beethoven set the tempos and turned the pages on the score and gesticulated wildly. They said that he went up to the tips of his toes and crouched way down, and he just flailed and threw himself into it entirely. And the piece finished, and Beethoven was still conducting. And the soloist came over, tapped him on the shoulder, and turned him around so that he could see the ovation. He couldn't hear the ovation because he was deaf. And the crowd waved their hands and took their hats off and brought handkerchiefs up and gave him the applause. 5 standing ovations for someone who couldn't even hear the orchestra or the vocalist that performed his music. But it was joy. Pure joy. So, add those in to your experiences, and you get an idea of what joy is about. But I'd like us for a minute to just go back and try to think about where this all could have started. And here's what I say. Joy begins in the timelessness of being. In order to consider this, let's think of a couple of our unity principles that we work with. So we think of, first, the principle that the divine encompasses all that we are. The divine is within us. Spirit is within us. In fact, we are an expression of that spirit. So it's all there, all the time. That truth of divinity lives with you day in, day out, hour in and hour out, minute in and truth, Spirit is within. The second truth, God is good. Or we might say the divine. That works a little better for me. The divine is good, always good, complete good. And being an expression of the divine means that that goodness is our heritage. So when we put those two things together, the fact that Spirit is within always, and all is good, we have the basis of joy. We might say that joy begins in the heart of God. And would begin, since we are inseparably connected with the divine, all the way back in time and timelessness. For us, it begins at that very same point. The very first point that we have where we are aware of being, our sense of being, joy is there. Joy is in us. Joy is full and complete. So we've got that. We've got that energy, that substance that underlies everything that we are and all that we live. Joy began in the timelessness of being. Doesn't always feel like joy, though, does it? Sometimes it seems pretty contrary. The situations of life have overtaken us. It almost feels like the polar opposite of joy that we're experiencing. So what do we do with that? Well, first of all, we realize that what appears to be there may not be, as we discussed just a minute ago, the truth of it. What appears in front of us, that which we seem to be experiencing, may not be the truth of our being. So, Stephen Covey, anybody remember Stephen Covey? Said this: we see the world not as it is, but as we are, or as we are conditioned to see it. So we're operating on how we are, or how we've been conditioned, and not necessarily on the truth. So the appearance of things right before us may be quite different than the truth of things. We've simply forgotten the truth. Our divinity, our wholeness, our goodness, our blessedness, the bliss that is our heritage. Don Miguel Ruiz talked about being domesticated, almost like you would domesticate an animal. We've been taught by parents, teachers, culture, our history as has been given to us, that in some terms, and I know you never would have said this, life is hard, and then you die. Have you heard that? It's not the truth. That's fake news.
Okay,
Don't believe a word of it. The good news is joy to the world. The Lord has always been here. Not just the Lord has come for the season. The Lord has always been here. So let me just go back a little bit. Lord is a term that's kind of antiquated for some of us. But Lord can be equated with Jehovah in the Hebrew Scriptures. And we take that equation a little further and we talk about the Christ. Not Jesus the Christ, but the Christ that is within us, that Spirit, that divine Spirit that is within us always, and which is the nature of our being. Remember that withinness. Other traditions say that as well. The Tao Te Ching puts it this way. You know, the Tao, meaning the path of the way. Hold to the Tao within, and joy will surely follow. Diane Dreher in The Tao of Inner Peace further explains, we achieve the joy of Tao by returning to our original nature. So let's remember that, the truth of who we really are. We see that sometimes, but grab onto that, hold to that truth. So that's where joy begins. Now I get to the part that I like all. The rebirth of joy. It's time for joy to be born again. Born again is a phrase that was there in my youth a lot. I'm going to give it a different meaning for me. There are none of us that are without dark times in our lives. Really tough situations. But the truth again, going back, is, as the psalmist says, weeping may linger for the night, but joy comes with the morning. The question is, are we able to both stay with that weeping, because that's part of who we are, but then move through to the morning and the joy that inevitably waits for us? Today is December 2nd. And this evening, a holiday, a festival is celebrated. Anybody know what it is?
Yes, Hanukkah.
Hanukkah! Who said it? Oh, anyway, it doesn't matter. Was it you? It was Phyllis. Hanukkah.
I heard it yesterday.
Oh, yes. Good. We don't care how, you didn't have to tell us that. So, Hanukkah has a little bit of a history. A lot of a history, actually. It was a festival that was initiated almost 200 years before the birth of Jesus. And here's how it went. The Hebrews were in relative peace and being able to pursue their religious practice as they normally did in Jerusalem in the temple. It was very, very, very special. But a conquering king of Syria, Antiochus Epiphanes, decided that he didn't quite like some of the political things going on, and he was going to shake some things up. So he decided to conquer Jerusalem, and he did so in opposition to many of the Hebrews that were there, and in so doing slew those who opposed him, and took the temple, that very, very holy place. And in that temple abolished all worship and sacrifice that was normally given on a daily basis, and then went on to sacrifice pigs on the altar, and to erect an altar to Zeus, a Greek god, profaning the temple. Of course, it wasn't allowed to go on. There was a revolt. It took more than 3 years, but eventually the revolt was successful. When it was successful, the temple was restored, was cleaned up, it was rededicated. And that's when Hanukkah began, the Festival of Lights, an 8-day celebration where every evening a candle on the menorah is lit to celebrate that return of the light, that return to joy after that long, lingering dark night, the return of joy. Now you may have experienced a long darkness like that, and you may have gotten to the other side of it. You may have gotten at least to the brink of joy. And you might be like me. You've settled for a ho-hum existence. I've never had that real long dark night of the soul. Maybe it's coming, I don't know. And in that ho-hum existence, I didn't really experience much joy. I had some nagging resentments, a few challenges that didn't go very well. Once in a while, a relatively major one. But I lived, for the most part, an experience with only a meager bit of joy in my life. Once in a great while. Didn't know why it came, but it was nice for a minute. Of course, you may be one of those people that's joyous part of the time, good part of the time. But you imagine that joy just comes and goes on its own. Well, now it's here and now it isn't. And you're grateful for it. But you couldn't say you characterize your life as being a life of joy. So whichever of those you are, someone who has experienced that long night, you've worked through it, somebody who lives a ho-hum existence, or some of you that have some joy going, I invite you to actively engage the rebirth of joy, to choose joy. Let joy be born again. And here are 3 ways we can do that. I'm going to give you a quick 3 ways. First, know the truth that underlies everything, that there is an energy and a substance underneath everything that is profoundly and completely good. Profoundly inclined to work in your favor. Know that. And when you entertain that thought, recycle it. Don't just let it evaporate. Recycle. 2, see the joy that is yours. Witness it in others. When you witness it, let it really get into you. Imagine it for yourself. You know, the imagination is a wonderful thing, and it can be powerful for us. As powerful as something really happening. So imagine it vividly. Feel it thoroughly, fully. And then see it in memory as well. Go back. Reminisce. See it perhaps in a memory with spiritual eyes beyond this life as we know it, this physical existence. It's possible, you know. But thirdly, seize the opportunity. Play a role in bringing joy into your life again. If you find yourself on the brink of joy, just abandon yourself. Let yourself, don't care about what somebody else thinks, what you look like, or anything like that. Just abandon yourself to joy. You might be sitting around waiting for joy to appear. Well, then set the stage for it. Prepare. Intend. Sets the stage for joy. The joy that you know in the truth is there for you. The town of the carol, "O Little Town of Bethlehem," one little line in there that I really like. Let it be born in us today. Remember, "O Little Town of Bethlehem," be born in us today is a line in the second verse of "O Little Town of Bethlehem." So as you imagine it, what you're going to do is you're going to summon the inspiration that will precipitate the action that will bring that joy in your life. Last evening I had the great pleasure of participating in the Electric Light Parade. Boy, I couldn't believe how big a thing this is in Payson. Celebration of light. It was big. How many watched it or somehow got it? Well, quite a few, so you know what I'm talking about. So a few of us braved the cold and we sat on the trailer that you see outside, which is our sleigh. And we did that, and we had a speaker. There you go. We had a speaker, and the songs were wafting over the sides of our sleigh. And I got a couple more. Where we were. Songs were wafting over the side of that sleigh, and the frolicking was going on. I don't know what kind of also. I was out walking, giving out candy canes. Teresa was there walking with me, and Rick was walking on the other side. But we sang the song "Sleigh Ride" over and over and over again. It was a good one. And then all of a sudden I noted a song that was different. I choose joy. Wow. That got it. It's a choice. We can make a choice. We can choose joy. We can allow the truth that we know to just seep into us and come out of us. We can be active. We can play that role. choose joy. So I say, let joy be born again, today and every day. So it is.
So, we have a song. And we're going to stand, and we're going to sing Joy to the World. So, now is the time to share our gifts and our offerings. I invite you to hold your gift in your hands and call to mind your heart's desires. Please affirm with me, I desire the highest and best in life.
I draw the highest and best to me. I give joyfully. I receive with deep gratitude. Amen.
And we have some special music during the offertory. And we have Betty Acker on the flute. That would be my cue.